Hey guys, it's Bart Johnson here. Today I want to share with you 10 of my tips for getting cinematic aerial footage. So as we all know, quadcopters, drones, whatever you want to call them, are becoming much more popular, much more affordable, and a lot of people are getting their hands on them. And I want to share with you how to get the best cinematic footage from these devices so that you can use them in your filmmaking process and become a filmmaking tool rather than just something to fly around for fun. So my very first tip bases off the fact that drones are becoming more popular. Everybody sort of has them. They've been becoming much more affordable in the past few years. Now, when they first came out and were affordable to get your hands on, it was enough to just fly super high and get that shot that no one had ever seen before. You could just fly way up high and everyone would ooh and ah. But nowadays, that doesn't fly anymore, pardon the pun, and you need to get a little bit more creative with your shots. So my first tip is that often flying low is actually better than flying high. You don't just want to go as high as you can and see as far as you can anymore. You sometimes want to move closer to the ground because that's where your action is, that's where your subject matter is, and it's going to give you a lot better footage, and you can still use it in ways that no other cameras before could be used. My next tip is something that a lot of new operators may forget, but something that a lot of longtime cinematographers pick up right away, and that's that you are still composing a shot. You still have to compose your elements, and you still have to obey the rule of thirds. So that's my next tip, is when you're flying around, don't just follow stuff in the center of the frame. Don't just do whatever looks good and think that's going to be great because it's from the air. Really try and compose your shot using the rule of thirds, and you're going to get images that are much more pleasing to the eye and look much more cinematic. Continuing on that theme of carefully composing your shots, my next tip is to utilize foreground elements whenever possible. Photographers and cinematographers are very familiar with the concept of foreground, middle ground, background. You want to have layers and depth to your shot. Well, it's no different with an aerial shot. Get some foreground elements in there because they're going to help you convey motion. They're going to help you convey scale. Get some people in the shot if you're shooting something large, and it's really going to add to the depth of that shot, and it's really going to add that little wow factor and pop that your shots are going to need. My next tip to keep in mind is to try and move the camera in as many different directions simultaneously as possible. Think of like a slider move. Sure, you could put a camera on a slider and just slide side to side, and that's a cool looking shot. But what happens when you put that camera on the slider and while you slide, you also pan with a subject? You get an amazing looking shot. So try and do that same thing with your aerials. Don't just fly at something, try flying around something, try orbiting, try tilting, try adding whatever movement or motion you can into that shot. It'll make it a lot more dynamic. Now, there are some challenges to moving an aerial platform through the air as opposed to just moving a camera on the ground, and one of those is that sometimes you can get props in your shot. So my next tip is to either fly slowly and precisely, or try and stick to flying backwards whenever possible. If you move backwards, your blades are going to be tipping towards the back away from the lens of the camera, and you can get your shots and make sure that everything is clean. Also, if you move and fly slowly and precisely, you're going to ensure that your shots don't dip or your props don't dip into your shot, and you're not going to have to worry about masking those out or zooming in on your footage in post. Now, one thing to consider very carefully, obviously, when you're up there flying is where is your light? What is lighting your subject, and where is your light source, the sun, located in orientation to your camera? Now, these cameras have a hard time, whether it's a GoPro or something on a DJI Phantom or something else, a lot of them have a hard time going directly into sunlight. That may be where your subject is, and that may be the direction you want to go, but see if you can find another angle. I always find that it's best to keep your lighting either directly behind you for a nice, well-lit, flat kind of shot, Or if you want a little bit more contrasty of a shot, try and orient so that the sun is off to your side, to the left or the right. So be mindful of where the sun is and where your light is. Again, in regards to light, these smaller cameras, they have a difficult time handling a lot of light, especially direct sunlight. And the way that some of these cameras deal with that, specifically the GoPros and the DJIs, is a lot of times they will boost the shutter speed because it's a fixed aperture camera. They can't do anything else. They can't stop down to cut down on that light. So they'll boost your shutter speed way, way up in order to compensate for the light. Now this will cause a few different problems. The problems are you may get a little bit of jello cam effect because as the shutter speed is faster and faster, it's capturing all those micro vibrations as you're flying along. Or you might get the oh so familiar propeller shadow across your lens. And that's happening again because the shutter speed is fast enough, it's picking up those micro shadows as they go across your lens. Now, how do you deal with this? I recommend instead of jacking up your shutter speed or letting the camera do it itself, look into some ND filters that you can put onto your camera. They have them for GoPro and there are several kits for the different DJI Phantoms as well. And what this will allow you to do is to take out a few stops of that light so the camera is not going to have to be at as such of a high shutter speed and you can get a much more natural looking shot and you won't have to worry about any of that jello cam or the prop shadows. Now, like I just said, some of these cameras that we're putting on these things, specifically GoPros, they have a lot of full auto modes. And my next tip is to whatever camera you're using, try and shoot as manual as possible. This means limit your GoPro's ISO settings. Don't let it do auto white balance because it'll shift in the middle of a shot. Same with the DJI cameras. Make sure you specifically select your settings for the shot and the environment you're about to shoot in. Don't use anything auto if possible, especially white balance, because as you turn in and out of the sun or different angles, your white balance is going to shift in the middle of a shot and there's no way to color correct that out. Going along again with that theme of taking as much control away from the camera as possible, I would recommend that you shoot in whatever flat profile your camera has. If it's a GoPro, shoot in Pro Tune. If it's a DJI Phantom with their onboard cameras, use their log format. What this is going to do is it's going to widen your dynamic range, it's going to flatten out your image, and what it's going to allow you to do is then color grade in post and really get the best looking image. Don't let that camera make decisions that you are locked into. So whenever possible, I would recommend shooting in those flat profiles. My final tip is something to help you smooth out your footage if you're still having difficulty, if your gimbal's not doing the best job, if you got a lot of wind buffeting you or something like that. And that is to shoot in 60p or other higher frame rates and then convert the shot into slow motion. Now, obviously, this won't work for all sorts of shots. If you have a shot with people or cars or anything moving in it that you're going to know that it's been put into slow motion, it's going to be obvious and it's going to be weird. But if you're just doing landscape stuff, I like to shoot in 60p for big environmental shots and then be able to slow that down in post, and it'll smooth out any little bumps and jitters that may happen from a gust of wind or something like that. So that's something to look into if it works for your particular shot. Well guys, there you go. Those are my 10 tips for getting better and more cinematic aerial footage out of your drones. I know that a lot of people are getting a hold of them and they really are a fantastic movie making and cinematic tool. So hopefully this will help you guys to get away from just that flying high, I can see everything shot, and really into focusing on your composition, your camera movement, your camera settings, and getting some shots that'll really impress your viewers. So guys, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel, like this video if you liked it. I got a lot more stuff coming for you guys in the future. I appreciate it.